Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Did you think I didn't know the memory? Or
No,
what?
I was thinking of it, and then I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it, Mary.
Okay.
I think we should talk about how we first met. Do you remember how we first met?
I don't. I should.
Okay. I was
you?
telling the guys this earlier, but we actually, I think we kind of knew of each other before then, but we actually met in the Rome airport. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
So Mason and I were on our honeymoon. We were just leaving Rome, Fiumicino Rome airport. Great, lovely place. They actually lost my luggage, but it's fine. Not bitter. It's humbled me in a lot of ways. But we ran on one of the guys through the UMary study abroad program, recognized him, kind of knew of him, knew enough to say hi, and he's like, actually, some of the other guys are here. Do you want to go see him? So we saw Carol, Bryn, and then that's the first time I think I met you and your husband in the Rome airport. Very unlikely you'd meet another North Dakotan, especially from UMary in the Rome airport. But
I think that was our second day that we were in Rome only.
okay, and you guys went to Poland?
We were going to Prague. No, Poland.
Poland,
right. Yep.
before
How
you
do
started the
remember
Rome
that better than
program. Yeah. Before you started the Rome program.
Yep.
Yeah. That was exciting. I'm like, what is it like? When I was trying to think of like, how did Caitlyn and I meet? And I feel like most of the time it's just like, oh, I knew somebody who knew somebody. But yeah, I'm glad
That's really funny.
to
I remember finding out like a month or so later that you announced that you were pregnant.
Yes. Yep.
So
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Yeah, I feel like feels like a lifetime ago, but at the same time it feels like yesterday. But someone's life has happened. Now got engaged, married, you have little Franny.
I know. And now you have 3 kids.
Right? Yeah, it's crazy how time flies and how good the Lord is. But let's start. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself? Who you are, where you're from,
Yeah.
all the things.
So my name is Katelyn Helget. I am from MAIDEN, North Dakota. I've lived there my whole life. I went to university in Bismarck, North Dakota, out at the University of Mary, and I studied Catholic studies. And yeah, while I was there, I met my now husband, and my junior year of college, I actually had our first daughter, Frances. And so I remember taking finals my junior year.
Because you had her in December, right?
I had
like
her
the
in
end
December.
of the semester.
Yep. So I was taking final tests with an 8-day-old baby.
Jeez.
So yeah, and so it's been a really crazy, kind of wild ride through college, and now I just graduated this spring, and we bought our first home, so we'll be moving in probably this weekend.
Congratulations.
We're in just the final finishing touches of that. So
I've been loving to see kind of the projects and all the things. It's super fun. Especially did together. And you graduate with education, right? You said?
No, I was education
Okay.
prior to the birth of my daughter.
Okay.
So the first years of my undergrad were in primary education.
Okay.
And then I switched to Catholic studies. A little change of heart. So yeah.
That's awesome. And how beautiful you can bring that into your home. And now Ben and you do videography kind of on the side. Because you also stay home with Frances, correct?
Yep. So I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do part-time. I'm a marketing and social media manager at a local coffee shop. And then, yeah, my husband and I do wedding videography on the side as like a little creative outlet for us. So
Right. That's awesome. And do your parents own? No, family owns,
yeah,
right?
My mom is a co-owner of the coffee shop that I work at.
Yeah, that's awesome. How beautiful. Little entrepreneurship in your blood and bones. Talking about motherhood and the transition into motherhood. How would you describe your transition into motherhood? How was that for you emotionally, spiritually, all the things? I want to hear it all. I'm all yours.
Yeah. So, yeah, prior to becoming a mother, so the transition for me was actually a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I don't know, I had this mindset that it was going to be super easy and it was going to go really smooth, and that first trimester with the morning sickness was going to be the hardest part of it for me.
Because you just get this beautiful baby in your arms, and then they're like, you think they're perfect, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot of beautiful crosses to carry that you have, within managing your time or giving your life to another, right? Like you have a whole nother little being, a whole nother soul that's dependent upon you. And it's a big transition, it's different from your spouse because they are they're dependent on you in so many ways, but not as dependent as a young child, you know?
Yeah. And so for me, the postpartum was a lot more challenging than I had initially thought. And also I had her in December, so we're tucked away in North Dakota in the middle of a snowstorm, you know, not being able to get out. And, but yeah, so yeah, I guess the hardest part of that was realizing how selfish that I was prior to becoming a mom. And I guess not to like my own fault, but I just hadn't realized that within myself, because so much of our life is just centered around ourselves and doing what we want to do with our time when we want, you know, chasing our own passions and our own dreams and desires. And even when we, like you were saying, when we get married, we're still called to, you know, serve our spouse and like put their needs before our own as well.
Submit to our husbands.
Yeah. But like my husband can go to the bathroom by himself. He can feed himself. He can put himself to sleep and entertain himself. Whereas, you know, a child can't do any of those things for a really long time, and they rely on their mother to be able to do those things for them. Absolutely. And so, yeah,
and even though it's in our nature as mothers to be nurturing, to be handmaidens of the home in that way to our kids, doesn't make it automatically easy, even though it's a God-given gift to like practice these exercises, spiritual exercises. I think, just because it's inherent doesn't mean it's always easy because of our human nature, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something too, like the social media side of like motherhood tries to convince you that like, and all of what they say is true. Like, you were made for this, like you can do this. It's beautiful, and all those things are true, but I feel like what social media doesn't, and even like I'm guilty of it too, you know, we don't really share the struggles of it or the hard parts about what it means to be a mother.
Right, and some people, I think also within that, I've learned that some people don't, I think it's important to show the raw, the beautiful, the broken, right? Like, and so knowing, the discretion of who gets the privilege to see that within my life, to see, you know, like I think it's the balance of it all too. But I feel like it's a whole, social media is a highlight reel, and it makes everything like, it seems to be going this way for this mom, or this transition seems a breeze. Why is that not going for me? You know, why doesn't the Lord spare me from that? Or, you know, what have you?
But so initially like getting into motherhood, I was like realizing that my life really isn't about myself. And I knew that before, you know, I took Catholic studies, and every single class they told me that. And so it's something that I really knew inside my head, but I didn't really like experience it in the fullness that I had in motherhood, of completely laying down my life for my child and completely dying to myself at 2 a.m. every single night, you know. And it's a really like challenging call to be able to like practice that virtue of making your life a gift, but it's also a really beautiful call to be able to be Christ and imitate Christ in the laying down of life for your children.
Absolutely. I always halfway joke. I'm like, I like say to people, like, my kids humble me all the time. Like, no, they seriously, your kid, I could go on forever about this, but it's one of those things where kids are imitators, right? Like, they see so much about how does mom or dad handle this, or the way they uphold themselves, or what they say. And like, I think it's important of truly practicing, right, your faith within your vocation, especially your children, because they're like little minds are like sponges, like soak up everything. And I joke of like, my kids show me the broken parts of who I am, but that is so beautiful. Like Venerable Fulton Sheen always says, like, sometimes the way the good Lord gets to the hearts of those is by breaking them. And I think that's like been a beautiful realization within motherhood of, wow, I feel like in a lot of ways the mother sets the tone for the household, right? Like, and if you, this transition is hard, or you're like maybe letting it fester up to resentment or whatever it may be, or just frustration, it can set that tone for your kids and your spouse to come into, regardless, you know, whether you are home with your kids, you're not home with your kids, what have you. I think is a big thing as well on top of that. But yeah, they humble me all the time, which is great. But also sometimes I'm like, okay. How would you say, now looking in hindsight, kind of experience that gratitude like towards the Lord of how do you think he prepared you for that transition, maybe not knowing in the moment, like whether it was when you were single or when you first got married to Ben, all the things. If you had to kind of think of ways, was it just preparing for marriage and engagement and like them being dependent on you more? Is there anything you could think of in that?
I think like the gifts of motherhood are like inherent in all women, not just, the Lord doesn't just give women the gifts of motherhood like when we get pregnant or when a baby is put into our arms at the hospital, right? We as women all have these gifts in us already. And so, yeah, I think like trying to draw on these gifts that are already inside of us. And I don't know, I think just like being able to recognize the gifts that femininity is to other people. Like I remember being I think I had met Ben, but it was before that we were married. Mm-hmm. And I was at a thrift store, as one is.
Very Caitlyn like.
I remember seeing this little boy with his mom walk in, and she was looking at the clothes and like going through looking at clothes for herself, and he like went off to the toy section and is rummaging through the toys, and he finds this like little toy car, and he is just like so excited about this little toy car. He like runs up to his mom and is like pulling on her skirt and saying, "Mommy, mommy, look, mommy, look." And like she like kept minding her own business and didn't look down at her son and kept looking through the clothes, and he continued like, mommy, look, like wanting to share the joys that he found, wanting to like her to give him the attention. Right. And I just remember like my heart like leaping like out of my body, like almost pulling my body like with my heart to this little boy, like trying to
grasp the attention,
to just like give him attention and like sharing the joys that he's finding in this world, and even in something as simple as a little toy car. And I think like attention to the needs of others and a desire to like care for others and compassion is something that like women are gifted with. Mm-hmm. And I think just being aware of them and like practicing just being able to like give of ourselves and setting aside our own desires at times.
Right. And finding joy in that too, Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Really beautiful. I was talking with my husband about being on here with you, and he was like, yeah, we can either live lives of gratitude and be grateful even for the difficult things, even for when our attention is called away from ourselves, or we can live lives of resentment. And like in motherhood, I feel like that is a temptation that often comes up, like a loss of freedom, that we can't do the things we want to do when we want to do them. I remember I think it was like the first month after I had Francis, and I just wept in my apartment because I couldn't go to the grocery store by myself. Right. Like by the time I got her changed and fed and in the car,
like my motivation's also gone.
I know.
It's like all the things. Yeah.
And got to the grocery store, like she'd be hungry and wet again. Right. And like I was like, I don't even have the freedom to go get groceries for my family by myself.
Right.
And so I think we can be resentful of like this transition and this change in our life. Or we can look at it with like gratitude that we get to care for and be entrusted by God with these beautiful children and beautiful little souls. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think sometimes too, especially within motherhood, I think, and just in general, whether you're a mom or you're not a mom, I think sometimes we have a misperception of what freedom is. Mm-hmm. Because with Christ, there is true freedom, right? And I think true freedom isn't just doing what you want, when you want, how you want, on your own time, and all these things. And I think it's a beautiful way, like our children, truly do humble us and remind us of what truly is important. And for us as mothers, that's tending to the needs of this little soul, right? Or little souls, or maybe grown ones, whatever that may look like. And I think, that's beautiful.
I'm glad that you clarified the definition of freedom, because I think there is a secular idea of freedom is, like you said, being able to do what we want.
And I think the problem is I, right?
Yeah, being able to do what we want when we want and chase our own passions. Whereas like a Christian freedom is, imitating Christ and doing his will, like just as like Mary was the most free when she said, Lord, be it done unto me according to thy will. And
I just got chills right there.
Yeah, so I think I'm really glad that you clarified that so we can really understand
and that
in motherhood there is freedom. In fact, like we can receive within the gift of motherhood true freedom.
Absolutely. And I think, and it doesn't go to say that like you can't have desires or passions or all these things outside of that, but how does, goes Christ, your spouse, and your children, and then everything else after that. And I think sometimes it's easy to kind of get those priorities mixed up in a lot of ways. How would you, kind of talking about the passions, desires, and, kind of deciding and discerning between like this pull of like, that we can try to find ourselves, and I think maybe can harbor that resentment in a lot of us, or that frustration of what advice or what would you say to maybe a mother or maybe someone preparing to be a mother one day? Like what was that discernment look like for you, and feeling that pull between those two things? And how did you come to the realization of this is what it maybe started to fester resentment, or maybe it didn't and you caught it early enough? Like what advice would you say to someone with kind of feeling that pull?
I would tell a new mom that the newborn stage is not what the entirety of the child's life is going to be like. I guess when I first had my daughter, and like the first month, 2 months, 3 months was just overwhelming, like constantly giving myself and feeling like I wasn't receiving anything from my child was really hard on me, because when we receive, we're able to give. And so to just constantly give and give was really hard. But if I would have known that it was going to be a lot easier, and I would soon like be receiving, like as soon as my daughter was able to smile at me, it was just like a huge relief for me, because that receiving that smile, and then eventually the laughter and her saying mommy and like wanting to play with me, and now
the joy of
I'm having full conversations with her, and she's like not even 2 yet.
Right.
And so we are able to they're able to give to us just as much as we are able to give to them, but just right away they're needy, they're figuring out life, they're just as we're trying to figure out being a mom. And so I wish I would have given myself more grace during that time, and just like reassured myself that the valleys don't last forever. So.
Right, absolutely. And I like just the joy of their presence. I always say like God likes to give a little wink of affirmation. I feel like sometimes, especially when, we're tending to our children's needs, it's hard to see the fruit of what that good is, whether it's emotional, physical, like all these things, especially within like parenting even. I just feel like things aren't sticking, or like, is this really, are kids really receiving this? Are they really soaking this in, or whatever? And then out of the blue, every once in a while, like Fulton just says something like so sweet to his brother, or like just the conversations Mason and I have around them, and like we ask, who do you want to pray for tonight? And they hear like who we're talking about, and whether it's like a family member or a friend that we're like, we should pray for them or what have you. And just having Fulton like say that, or Peter say that, it's like the sweetest thing of, wow, like it's actually paid off, and it's all the work and the effort and so much giving you do as a parent, just in general. It pays off by the little presents, even though, it's hard. It's like you have to extend grace up the wazoo for yourself, for them as they're still learning, and your spouse. And I think a lot of times too, even within that, it's having that gratitude just for the presence of that little child within your life extend to the gratitude you have for your spouse. I think it relays within your marriage relationship and the spiritual like peace within your home in a lot of ways. Something I was kind of thinking about earlier, I'm in and off of the book of like Jacques Philippe's Interior Freedom, which is a great book. If you have not read it, highly recommend it. Easy read. If you're a mom, you know what I'm talking about. Don't really have much time to read sometimes in certain season. And he talks about Saint Therese of Lisieux. Saint Therese, bomb saint. But so in her monastery, in her convent, they had a very, very intense schedule. And she would oftentimes, like the little time that she had to herself, whether it was to do something for her community, she would be constantly like interrupted, right? Like, and they would allow her to get frustrated and harbor like resentment and like just frustration that would be being taken out on her family of fellow sisters. And so she had begun this prayer, and now I even use it today since reading this, and I think it's so beautiful because I think it kind of grounds me and realizes, like, she says, like, I choose to be interrupted. And I thought that was so beautiful. I think, like, wow, especially when I'm trying to do the dishes or I'm trying to do laundry and a kid is tugging at my leg or wants mom to hold them, or I just get one kid down for a nap and the next one wakes up, and it seems like very basic things, but sometimes it can be very frustrating. In certain seasons, of course, I feel like it ebbs and flows in a lot of ways. And that allowed her to accept the interruption with good grace. And she also says, like, if no one was to interrupt her during her work that day, she would think of it as like a charming present from her loving God. And I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. Like something I can relate into this attitude, this spiritual exercise of gratitude for my family, the gratitude of, yeah, it's heavy stuff day to day and it's a lot to carry within your family. But I think, yeah, it's just a beautiful way. And a little snippet of what she had said is like, whatever happened, she passed the day peacefully and was never upset, because in everything she could do her will because her will was to accept everything. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so beautiful. I think it just kind of shows her deep surrenderment and how even through the life of a sister can be related to the vocation of married life and motherhood in a lot of ways too. So I thought it made me kind of think of that and kind of like a word of encouragement. I would love to ask you, what are some spiritual exercises you love to do to incorporate this sense of like gratefulness for tending to the needs of your children and this transition and, you know, the dying to yourself for not only the good of your beloved, your spouse, your husband, but also for the needs of your children as well. I'd love to hear, if there's anything that you've incorporated, whether it's a prayer or practically kind of put into practice in some ways, or even just a mindset change, you know?
Yeah, I think it seems super basic, but I think starting the habit, and I ain't perfect, I'm not going to pretend to be perfect, but of leaving my phone in my room when I'm staying at home with my daughter, because it allows me to not feel like distracted or like there's something else that I should be tending to or doing or like getting distracted and desiring outside of my role of being a mother. And yeah, because I caught myself for so long, like when there was a little break, going on my phone or checking things and making sure like, oh, did my husband text me? Does he need something? Or, scrolling, and my daughter is right there reading books by herself when I should be being present with her and tending to her and, teaching her the faith and just being a mom that is present and willing to give her attention in a world that really fails to to give attention.
Right.
And
to be attentive and to receive and to give too. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's not primarily like a Catholic, like,
but even though I think it's beautiful to see the practical of, and that's maybe something that someone needs to do of, wow, I am on my phone, or I'm mindlessly on it for whatever reason, and then that can harbor a lot of things of, whether it's anger or frustration or what have you, that, I can be just present to the person that's in front of me and to see them, fully as they are in that moment in a lot of ways too, especially our kids, right? And I think that's a beautiful reminder.
Another one too is just like good communication with your spouse about your needs, because we do have things like
Amen.
that we need to do like for ourselves, not in like a selfish way, but we need to take care of our own selves as mothers in order to care for our children, right? And so
you can't fill from an empty cup, right?
Yeah. And so like one thing that my husband Ben and I do is after he gets home from work, he'll go shower and do his thing, and then he'll do bath time with Francis, and I'm able to have, a half hour, 45 minutes to myself to be able to,
reset.
If I want to read or draw or just get the dishes done that I didn't get to do that day, or, just have some quiet time to myself even, has been really helpful to be able to communicate that and say, Benjamin, like this is what I need today. Like, can you just help me? And having the humility to say that.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that, very touch spot for moms and I think I struggle with, I think I've been better at the more kids we have, because I'm like, my arms are outnumbered now. I can't catch all of them. But I think, just admitting that I need help and accepting that. Like, it's not a form of weakness, but it's a sign of like humility and meekness of like, I need help. And the beautiful thing is you're not meant to do it by yourself. Like, there's a reason why there's a mom and a dad in a marriage, and they both play very significant, important roles within that, in tending to the needs of your children, the upbringing, the faith formation, what have you, all of it. I think, it's just a beautiful, because I think sometimes you feel like you have to do all yourself, right? Like, whatever capacity you are with your kids, especially as a mom, because you feel, I think it's easier, maybe not, I feel like it's easier for us to feel the weight of the family a lot in that aspect of tending to the home and the needs of our children, especially when they're first born. Yeah. Because you're nursing, they're so dependent on you, all these things that, the communication between the spouses, I think a really good practical sense of that.
I don't mean to turn like interviewer, but I have a question for you about that I think like a lot of newer moms would have as well. Because thinking about growing our family and how right now I like tending to the needs of one child is overwhelming at times. So how, or like what advice would you give to moms that have multiple children and like have needs that need to be met all at the same time?
Right. I think I'm going to kind of spring off yours a little bit with communication. I think one is communication with your spouse. Sometimes, especially because we personally have chosen for me to stay home with our kids, there's not like the time to do that, right? Like Mason isn't home, he can't do that. But I think it's also knowing that the Lord's grace extends far deeper and far wider than I think we like to give him credit for. I think because we're human, I think we like to put the Lord in a box, right? I think we just, okay, he can only go, like, the Lord wouldn't really do this, or he wouldn't really do that, but I think the way in which in our home of, like, how I can get through a day, some days are hard, some days are frustrating, some days are overwhelming, but to, choose that sense of gratitude with this transition into motherhood and all these things with dependent kids is to know that, the Lord extends his grace in so many beautiful ways. And also just to like communicate with, and my kids are so young. Fulton's 3, 2, and then George is like 4 or 5 months, of just communicating with them in a lot of ways too. And I think it's not, I think we see the fruit of just communicating with our children of like, okay, with our kids, when something's upsetting or frustrating, we always we always recognize our emotions. Yeah. Sometimes toddlers are just toddlers, right? So they're just doing their own thing for sure reasons. But it's recognizing that and just like, let's redirect it. Like, I have to remind myself, like, Sarah, this is your children, and this is not why you're frustrated. Mm-hmm. It's because X, Y, or Z, and finding the root of that. One prayer, oh my goodness, that I kid you not, Our Lady swoops in every single time. I cannot, golly gee, okay. I always pray if I'm in like a time of frustration or I can't get things done or I'm trying to like get a child down for a nap or whatever it is and it's just a struggle, or the plethora of situations that can be difficult. Saint Mother Teresa always said this prayer of Mother Mary. She said, Mary, Mother of Jesus, please be a mother to me now. And I always say that ever since, before Mason and I got married, like in times of just what it been where I'm just like, I need Our Lady to swoop me in her mantle. She does it every time without fail. I prayed that prayer on my way in here today. I kid you not. And I think it's saved me so many times of, wow, we have so many beautiful tools within the church to like redirect us to have this sense of gratitude to help through these things, whether it's saints to look to that had similar struggles or, saints like Saint Teresa of Lisieux that wasn't even a physical mother. All these things that I think show me an example of, wow, marriage is two imperfect people vowing to lead the other to heaven, to get the other to heaven. Doesn't make, same thing like relates to, I'm a imperfect person trying to raise saints, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it too, is that the Lord extends His grace. And you honestly now with having 3 kids, it's literally a day by day process. You take one day at a time, and you got to get to it because we have a duty, and it's difficult, it's hard, but it's also beautiful at the same time. That was a good question, Caitlyn. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to finish out my questions with what I'm going to ask every guest in the podcast to a certain capacity. What is the best marriage advice you've ever gotten, or what is the worst marriage advice you got, and how would you like combat that? Of like, why is it the worst marriage advice you gotten? What would you think if you had to pick one?
Marriage or parenting?
Both. We can do both. Yeah, marriage, parenting, whatever.
I think the best, and this kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, but I was so afraid to ask for help because I am a perfectionist and I like to do things my own way and like just show that I am capable on my own and it's like control freak. And so, I really struggle to ask for help right away in anything, in marriage and also in parenting. When having a baby. And I just realized really quickly that was not the way feasible or I wasn't going to be able to do it on my own. And so having the humility to ask for help and realizing that there are a lot of people that wanted to support me and wanted to help. Like, there are people that want to help you and want to like watch your kids for you if you just need an hour to yourself, or if you need to edit photos for an hour and just like need a little break. Like, there are people that want. It doesn't make you lesser of a parent. It's also tending to the spiritual, emotional, physical needs as a parent too, and that's important to give, Yeah. And so I had a mom just like encourage me that every mom ever needed help, and so to not be afraid to ask for it. Right. That's beautiful. Well, I'm glad that you came on. I'm glad that you could speak on this, transition to motherhood and all the things. It was nice having you. Thank you, Sarah. We'll be praying for you here on the podcast. All the good things.